a monk, was arrested in front of relatives and devotees in the middle of a temple. But when the authorities opened his secret files, they found documents that linked generals, politicians, and world-class billionaires. Who is Phra Nicha? Why did someone who should be practicing Dharma become the key that shakes the power system of the entire country? This is not just a matter of religion, but it is a ticking time bomb that could change Thailand forever. The truth hidden behind a yellow robe. Are you ready to know? This monk was arrested in the middle of the temple, but what he had shakes the power of the whole country. The afternoon sun burned the temple grounds until the brick floor was hot. The sound of crickets chirped faintly from the bushes along the wall. The smell of incense wafted in the air, mixed with the smell of people's sweat. A monk sat still under a Bodhi tree. His face was calm, but his eyes were wavering. The surroundings were filled with the faithful who had come to make merit. Suddenly, the sound of the police pickup truck's tires rang out. Dust flew as the officers got out of the truck. All eyes turned to the monk at the same time. The monk stood up slowly. His hands gripped his rosary beads tightly until his joints were white. The officer loudly announced, "We have an arrest warrant." A commotion erupted around the temple. The old woman holding the flower trembled, her hands shaking so much that the petals fell off. The little boy ran to hide behind his mother in fear. The monk did not resist. However, before he was handcuffed, he spoke softly but firm. "In the hut, there is something you should see." The officers turned to look at each other. The atmosphere was silent, as if the sound had been sucked out. Every footstep was clear in the silence. They followed the monk into the small hut. The room was dim, with only light coming from the old wooden windows. The smell of rotten wood and old books filled the air. Under the altar, the monk lifted the carpet, revealing a neatly closed wooden window. The policeman's heart beat rapidly. When they opened it, they saw an old rusty iron box. Inside was full of tightly sealed documents. One of the officers picked it up and looked at it as sweat slowly rolled down his temples. The words on the document made his hands tremble. It was a list of high-ranking officials with information on a huge amount of money transfers from abroad. The sound of swallowing was heard. The policeman turned to look at the monk in disbelief, but he only smiled faintly. "What I did was not for myself, but for the truth that they have been trying to hide for many years." The police phone rang frequently. The news began to leak out quickly. In front of the temple, it was crowded with media and villagers. The sky gradually darkened. Dark clouds formed above the top of the pagoda. A cold wind blew through, causing the Dharma chakra flag to flutter violently. The monk still stood still, even though he was handcuffed, even though he was being shouted at with vulgar words by some people. But his eyes still stared straight ahead, as if he knew that this matter was not over yet. It was almost midnight. The hut was surrounded by special officers. Inside another iron box that had just been found, there was something that no one expected. That night, it had not rained yet, but the sound of strong wind was clear. The leaves swayed in rhythm with someone's heartbeat. The special officer walked into the hut. He opened another iron box with shaking hands. Everyone in the room turned their heads in curiosity. Inside were various forms of documents, photographs, blueprints, financial charts, and several SIM cards, linked to the numbers in the political and big capital circles. Everyone's eyes are focused on the documents, until they can hardly swallow their saliva. Outside, the ambulance drums and flashlights illuminate the temple grounds. The media, TV, radio, social media, live reports straight from the temple gate. The wind is blowing harder. The remaining long incense sticks in the pot are shaking, as if nature is announcing something. Part 2, the monk's memories. As the monk was brought in, the staff carefully supported him. He stood with grace, even though his body was collapsing from stress. In his mind, there were images of the past flashing back. At that time, he was still an ordinary layman, working as an accountant for a big company, received a large salary. But every time he opened the financial statements, he saw numbers that did not match the truth. He began to be suspicious, started to write down questions. But the more he asked, the more he was threatened. That path led him to a turning point. One night, he discovered a transfer of 10 billion was moved to a non-existent account, just to hide traces of national corruption. So he decided to resign, sacrifice everything, turn to monkhood, to bring peace to Vipassana. But his mind was not calm. Episode 3. The hut was not quiet. The sound of a world-class media recorder rang out. The reporter jumped closer, asked in a stern voice, "Is there any evidence linking anyone?" The officer was silent, but the special officer picked up an important document. "This is a digital photograph." Everyone suddenly became silent. The scene was a scene in an air-conditioned airport. A man in a suit looked like he was receiving a check. In his hand was a large envelope, so still that many people swallowed their saliva. The monk moved his lips, but the voice was too soft to hear. So the female officer had to try to get closer. She listened and her eyebrows furrowed. This is an international money transfer, tens of billions of baht, in exchange for government policy. The sound of the officer lightly hitting the table. Everyone in the room shivered. A pine tree in the middle of the hut. The leaves trembled as if they knew the truth behind it. Episode 4, Media and the Outside World. In front of the big pagoda. The media competed to broadcast. There were social media girls talking on live broadcast. Some hugged the microphone like a kangaroo. This is a story that will shake someone's power. The reporter's voice echoed through the microphone. Hundreds of thousands of viewers waited to watch. Some broadcasted live on their mobile phones. There were many different opinions. Is Venerable Nicha the one who left the mark on the truth? Has she really changed our world? The messages quickly appeared on the screen. Episode 5, Light in a Second, a moment of silence and darkness, both in the hut and the temple grounds. A split second that was terrifying. The senior police officer adjusted his shirt buttons, raised his hand to call everyone to pay attention. We will perform a ceremony to reveal the evidence to the public. His voice was hoarse and low. If the information is correct, we will forward to the high-ranking state officials. Venerable Nicha stood still, but this time his eyes sparkled, a spark of determination and hope. Episode 6, The Announcement of the Truth. The media was led into the hut. Cameras scanned the dimly lit room. Images of several documents being carried. Pen, staff, and countdown sounds. 3, 2, 1. The officer opened an important document. It showed the names of national figures. The names included the prime minister, ministers, big businessmen, and those behind the procurement. The sound of flashes rang out at intervals. The definition of corruption was revealed. A sentence in the document read, "Every baht that passes through this account is a compensation for exchanging benefits for government policies." The groans of the audience at home pierced through the live feed. People followed with heart-wrenching eyes. In that moment, some people even groaned in anger. Some were so shocked that their bodies shook. Episode 7, Silence After the Rain. The sky was filled with dark clouds. The wind blew harder, causing the Dharma chakra flag to flutter. The old woman's tears fell. The rain started to drip, lightly in front of the pagoda. The monk raised his hand above his head. His eyes were still fixed on the front. The rain poured down harder. It was like nature was participating in the ceremony of truth. The officer clearly announced, "The evidence will be sent to the independent organization." The echo in the hearts of all participants. Episode 8, Undercurrent. The rain got heavier. The raindrops hit the roof of the hut, making a loud bang, but no one moved from their place. All eyes were on the projector screen, which was showing the photos from the secret camera. The first image was a man in a suit sitting on a black leather sofa. A woman dressed in luxury was around. On the table were bank documents, contracts, and bags of cash. The next image was two men holding hands on a luxury yacht in the middle of the deep sea. Behind them was the flag of a country involved in a trade agreement. Many of the audience were silent. Some covered their mouths. Some bowed their heads, tears streaming down their faces. The media began to ask questions. Is this money laundering? How is Venerable Nicha involved in this? Who is behind these documents? Venerable Nicha stood still. He did not say a word. He only raised his hands in a Y. Episode 9, Light in the Shadow. In the middle of the night, after the rain stopped, a phone call came in at the police station. A special officer answered the call. The voice at the other end spoke softly, but clearly. If all that information is released, your loved ones would not be safe. The voice hung up without waiting for an answer. The officer clenched his jaw, his hands shaking, but he did not say anything more. He walked back to the hut with a file in his hand, a file that had not appeared in any media. It was a secret file. It contained the code names of powerful people in the military and global business. It was linked to foreign organizations. Chapter 10, Karma Catches Up. At midnight, Venerable Nicha began to tell his story. No one asked. His voice was soft, but everyone listened quietly. I used to be someone you don't know. I used to be in their circle. I used to have money, power, and people who applauded me. But I saw things that others dared not see. A child who was homeless because of a heartless expropriation project. A farmer who was landless because of a forged document that I signed without knowing. I resigned on the day my money turned to blood. And I shaved my head. Entered the temple. The sound of distant thunder rang out. Everyone in the hut got goosebumps. Episode 11, The Invisible Hand. The next morning, the news of the arrest of Phra Nicha was a headline of every news channel. The image of him standing amidst the police got viral. But what didn't make the news were the secret files stolen that night. The surveillance cameras in the hut were hacked, and within 5 minutes, Someone came in and took the important evidence files. The officer who found the incident disappeared immediately the next morning. His mobile phone was turned off. His house was searched by strangers in black. Episode 12, The Shadow of Faith. The villagers started to split into two sides. One side believed that Phra Nicha exposed evil. The other side accused him of being a fake monk. In front of the temple became a battleground of argument. Someone set up a stage to gild the monk, while another side wrote a sign saying disrobed. While social media was boiling, behind the scenes, there was a shadow of political capital, trying to pay the media to cover up the news. But the news was too fast to stop. Many people shared it. Someone made a clip exposing. Independent journalists followed the money trail in the documents. Episode 13, The Painful Truth. Phra Nicha was taken to a secret location. No one knows where she is. Only 4 high-ranking officials and 1 independent investigative reporter were allowed to listen. Do you know what will happen next? The official asked in a serious tone. Phra Nicha smiled slightly. I know, but I'm not afraid. The truth doesn't need my life, but it needs someone to listen. Episode 14, The End of Power. The next morning, key ministers announced their resignations, followed by several provincial governors and a general who was accused of corruption in an arms deal. Leaked documents were published by foreign journalists. The headline of the world's biggest news. Thailand faces its biggest crisis of faith in decades. In the temple, Phra Nicha is still meditating under the rain-soaked Bodhi tree. No smiles or anger, just still and bright. Episode 16, Voice from the Shadows. The next night, people are still camping in front of the temple. Some are burning incense. Some are holding signs. The wind blows through the Bodhi leaves, shaking. The light from a phone shines on Phra Nicha's shadow through the window of the hut. A young female reporter walks into the middle of the circle. Her name is Anya. Her voice is soft but firm. I have an audio clip that no one has heard yet. The crowd immediately falls silent. Anya presses play on the clip on her phone. Are you sure that you want to expose everything? A man's voice asks. If it stops the injustice, I will. Phra Nicha's voice replies. Anya stops the clip. This is the sound before the day of the arrest. She turns to the live camera. We have been tricked into fearing the truth for too long. Episode 17, Shadow Witness. Meanwhile, in another province, an old man sat by the wooden window. On the table were old file folders sealed with official seals. His name was Pu Suong, a former intelligence officer who had disappeared 20 years ago. Pu Suong looked at the TV screen, showing the image of Phra Nicha. Tears flowed slowly. It's time, he muttered. He took out the file. Inside was a secret organization chart that linked to many countries. There were names of people in uniform, businessmen, and politicians. We've hidden it for too long. He picked up the phone. He called a number that he remembered. I'm ready to give my statement. Chapter 18, The Wheel Starts to Turn. The next morning, the media reported that an important witness had come forward. The government began to respond. They set up a new investigation committee and ordered the investigation of several politicians' assets. An anonymous hacker released some documents online. People all over the country began to see the light. The university organized a seminar on faith and power. Students crowded the conference room. A voice asked in the middle of the group, if it weren't for Venerable Nisa, would we have known about these things? Silence, but no one denied it. Episode 19, The Point of No Return. One night, a gunshot was heard in the middle of a small market. A reporter who had reported on Venerable Nisa was shot and in critical condition. A surveillance camera showed a man in black fleeing on a motorbike. The whole country began to panic. People demanded protection for the whistleblower. The government announced the establishment of a special center to protect and support witnesses. But the criticism did not stop. We are in an invisible war, a scholar said on a TV program. Not between good and bad people, but between the truth and what people want to believe. Episode 20, Return to Emptiness. At night in the temple, Venerable Nisa continued to meditate under the Bodhi tree. His breath was light and deep. Despite the cameras on every corner, he seemed calm, as if he had no presence. The fire in people's hearts might be burning, but he was cooling down every moment. The sound of leaves falling on the ground, soft but clear. His shadow stretched long on the rain-soaked ground, as if to say, the darkness will pass, when the heart is not afraid of the light. Chapter 21, The Path of Confession. Pu Suong walked into the Special Investigation Center. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes were resolute. The officer took the file from him, opened it slowly. Inside was a list of more than 70 names of the gang. There were former national leaders, famous businessmen, and generals. A voice in the conference room spoke softly. If this is true, this will shake the foundation of the country. Pu Suan nodded. It is true, and I asked to be on the witness list. The officer paused for a moment before handing him a pen. Chapter 22, The Last Record. In the hut, Phra Nicha opened an old notebook. The pages were full of dense handwriting. It was a record of his life, since before he became a monk. Events that no one knew before. I recorded it for the next generation. If I disappear, someone must know that what I did was not my fault. The sound of rain falling again. Drops hit the wooden windowsill. Phra Nicha smiled, before closing his eyes. His heart was as calm as water in a pond. The officer received a file from him. Opened it slowly. Inside was a list of more than 70 names of the gang members. There were former national leaders, famous businessmen, and generals. A voice in the conference room spoke softly. If this is true, this will shake the foundation of the country. Pu Suan nodded. It is true, and I asked to be on the witness list. The officer paused for a moment before handing him a pen. Chapter 22, The Last Record. In the hut, Phra Nicha opened an old notebook. The pages were full of handwriting. It was a record of his life, since before he became a monk. Events that no one knew before. I recorded it for the next generation. If I disappear, someone must know that what I did was not my fault. The sound of rain falling again. Drops hit the wooden windowsill. Phra Nicha smiled, before closing his eyes. His heart was as calm as water in a pond at midnight. Can't take it, no ripple. Phra Nicha's shadow. Still there. Chapter 23, The Last Light. A month later. All the news had died down from the media, but the impact continued. Many cases began to enter the justice process. Many government officials were arrested and dismissed. Many universities opened a course on moral courage. Using the case of Phra Nicha as an example, in a classroom, a female student raised her hand to ask the teacher, "Teacher, do you think, is he still alive?" The teacher smiled faintly, before answering in a calm voice. Sometimes people who do great things don't want anyone to remember them. Just let the truth not be forgotten. At the foot of the mountain outside the city, under the old Bodhi tree, there was a neatly folded saffron robe. No one saw its owner again, but every time the wind blew, the Bodhi leaves still trembled, as if someone was praying in silence.